All right. Hello, folks.
Hey,
Happy Saturday. Welcome to episode 10.
10, double digits.
Yeah. So we're going to be streaming for a couple of hours. As usual, we're going to be test driving the implementation of Mike's Song Themes app. Anything you want to say, Mike, before we dig in?
No, I think just dig in.
All right. So let's see. So where did we leave off? Let me add that.
Well,
There
probably
we go.
should run all tests, see if we left ourselves a breadcrumb.
Yes, let's do that.
I think we didn't, but we'll find out.
It's always good to run all tests when you start a session anyway.
True.
I just noticed
Yeah.
you're on Spring Boot 3.2.0. We probably want to upgrade that to 3.2.1. Not that it's urgent, but always good to stay up to date.
Meaning do it live or do it offline another time?
We can do it offline. Or maybe if we have a few minutes at the end, we'll do it.
Okay.
It should literally be just change the 0 to a 1 and everything should just be fine.
What was the number again?
3.2.1. Let's see, what's the calendar look like? Calendar Spring IO. Let's see, when does 3.2 comes out in a couple of weeks? So yeah, probably good to be up to date on that.
You said 3.2 or 3.2.2?
3.2.2 comes out on the 18th.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so we'll want to keep up to date. So no breadcrumb tests. So
Yep.
let's
we got this thing where we left off.
Yeah. Right. So we wanted to add more song attributes. If you bring up the song searcher code.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And so some of us, mainly Suiji and myself, had played around with different ways of doing that that indexing. So I thought I'd mention that we tried a few different ways, and it turns out that either a for loop, basically a nested for loop, or a nested for each is actually the most readable.
Most readable code.
Yeah. So let's see. For those of you who
that's the experiment you had.
Yeah. That might have been it. Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
I don't think I ended up putting in that code. Hey, it's Deshaun. Welcome.
Hey, Deshaun.
So let me see if I can. So this is the fun part about if you join the Discord, we have a dedicated channel to basically talk about stuff that we do on stream, and I'm going to copy and paste this, and then I'm going to put it on my screen. So let me see where that go in Song Searcher.
When you say copy and paste,
I'm going to paste it in my local thing, and I just basically just so I can show folks. So let me switch screens. Screen. So what we see here is this is basically the same thing. So given a stream of songs, what we want to do is we want to, in a sense, the operations that we're doing, because each song has multiple themes, we need to, in a sense, denormalize the data. So instead of one copy of the song with its multiple themes, we basically copy the song multiple times, one per theme. So we end up with song theme, song theme, song theme. And that's what so that was one of the things we looked at, was sort of doing a flat map, but it turned out that it's just easier to do a compute if absent. So we did a different thing, but the compute if absent. So if we switch to your view again, so I'm going to switch
Hold on a
back to your
second.
screen.
Let me move on.
Yeah. So
Now you can.
yeah. So in the original or in the current version, if you scroll down a bit, we have the getter default, but actually what we want, so on line 27, we've got getter default, and then we have to add the song, and then we have to make sure to put it back in the map. Compute if absent basically does that in sort of one operation. So I'm going to switch back to my screen now. And so the compute if absent, we basically say if there isn't already a list there, Sweetie used set, but basically it's the same thing. We create basically a new placeholder for that theme, and then but either way we then add the song. And so this turns out to be actually I think the most readable. The other alternative, which I came up with, actually I didn't come up with it. With quite a bit of prompting, ChatGPT came up with it. ChatGPT came up with some very inefficient or very confusing ways to do things. And so I had to push it to say, no, can you come up with something simpler? And so it came up with this nested for loop, which is basically for each song, for each theme in the themes, compute if absent, and then add it. And so these two are basically equivalent. This one is using nested for loops, and this one is basically using a for each. I don't. So I was saying in the Discord, it's like I'm not sure which is more readable. The first one seems more readable because at least I've seen for loops all my life, for most of my life, whereas the for each is a little bit different, but they're essentially the same. And so.
And you were saying the first one's less efficient. Or were you saying the one that ChatGPT came up with was?
Well, so it turns out the one we did, and anything doing with streams, and ChatGPT came out with a bunch of different alternatives are pretty inefficient. Now, of course, we're never getting to the scale where that matters, and so for me, it's much more about what is the most readable. Turns out, I think this for loop is much more readable, and it turns out to also be probably the most efficient.
Interesting.
At least at this level. You could always make things more efficient and so on, but I think this is because it's not creating temporary iterators and it's not creating a lot of temporary stuff, which is what streams sometimes end up doing, especially when you're doing some of the flat mapping and grouping that are some alternatives. So anyway, if you want, we had quite a bit of discussion around this. So as usual, if you want to know how to join those discussions, you can always, if you're not already there, join the Discord. So just ted.dev/discord if you're not already there. And again, we have a channel dedicated to talking about stuff that we've done on stream. So that was the experiment that I wanted to do, and so there we go.
So should we implement that one, the more readable one?
Yeah. So I think doing the nested for loops. We could do the nested for each. It's basically the same thing underneath, whichever one you prefer. But I think either one of those is going to be better than what we currently have.
Yeah, I agree with you. The first one. Let's go with the first one. Again, probably because I've decades of for loops.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting what some of the newer developers is more readable to them, who have a different paradigm of what they, how their career arc went.
Right.
Like they never did for loops and they went straight to for each and streams and not much. Could be interesting.
Well, it's funny though. It's like streams have been around since Java 8. Java 8 is what, 2014, I think. Long time ago. Like there are likely very many developers who started programming in Java after streams existed. Yet my experience with working with such developers is they don't use streams, and it's just a sad state of affairs that's the case. It's like learn streams. They've been around for a very long time. They aren't necessarily the most efficient, but we're not always about efficiency, right? We're often about readability. Um, and even though here we ended up with something that doesn't use streams at all, uh, I think it's a shame not to learn it. One thing that
Agreed.
one thing that I think was really interesting about, and this has been my experience with interacting with tools like ChatGPT, is you really have to know how to evaluate what it's giving you. Because I was like saying here, this is what I currently have. Can you make it more efficient? Can you make it easier to read? But you still have to evaluate it, and you still have to test it to make sure it's still working properly, because there's certainly no guarantee. There's nothing inherent in these tools that will give you code that's working. Um, and I really caution folks when they use tools like this that you have to know what it's doing. You have to understand what it's generating, and you have to understand what you're asking for at sort of the next level up of architecture or abstraction. Because you could certainly ask it questions and it'll give you answers, but in no way does it say this is the right solution for your problem. And one of the things I've seen happen then uh, is people implement very complex things that are completely that work, but are just the wrong solution because they're novices and didn't have any way to evaluate what was an appropriate solution. Um, and that's where I think these tools can be sort of dangerous, in the sense of leading you down a road that is not one you should go down, and you end up with sort of complexity built on complexity built on complexity when there was just no need for that. Hey, Phil Nuffle, welcome. Doing great. So you said something. Some architects say that for is a code smell in Java. For loops, I think whoever says a for loop is a code smell should take a look at this code and say and tell me that it's not fine. Like, there are cases where
Do you think?
streams are a much better solution, but
I wonder if that architect is thinking of an indexed for loop where you're doing, int I equals 0, semicolon. You know what I
well,
mean? That
even that has its uses.
right.
I think so.
True. If you want to do like a
Yeah. I react very badly to generalized overarching statements like this is bad, like for loops are bad. Like, sometimes they are the best way to do things. So I that's why I try not to make blanket statements. Other than like even TDD, like you should not always do TDD. You should do it when it's appropriate. Um, but I find like there, like here was a case where really the streams ended up being much more complex. And we actually came up with, again, if you look at the Discord, you can see the solution. I'll actually copy. I'll copy what ChatGPT suggested for. Basically, that was pure streams. Look at this. Oh, this is a pure stream implementation. This is terrible from a readability standpoint. This is terrible. Like, I'm sorry, compare this stream implementation with this lovely 5-line for loop, which is really just 3 lines of code and 2 closing braces. This is terrible from a readability standpoint. It does the job. but it's just like trying to figure out what this is actually doing is not straightforward. It happens to use a map entry. Suigi created a pair class that did something similar that was slightly more readable. But still, it's like this flat map and then a collect with using a two map. And there's other ways to do it that's not quite this complex, but it ends up just streams don't have the power to do what we want to do in a way that's straightforward. Um, so what so I'll give ChatGPT the benefit of saying it also came up with this as the implementation. So this one, so this longer one is basically I said, hey, can you do this using the collectors to map? And so it said, okay, I'll do collectors to map. And so in this case, I kind of led it down the road of I was just curious how it would generate it. But originally, when I said, "Can you use streams and grouping by?" This is what it generated. But even this, I still think this, which is technically just as many lines of code as the for loops, it's still much more complicated than the nested for loops. And you sort of have to figure out, well, what is this flat map doing? And then what are you actually grouping by? And all those kind of stuff. So streams are not always the answer to readability. All right, I know that was a bit of a tangent, but I thought it was some really interesting experiments.
That's cool. So should we?
Let's get back to your screen. And
so do you want to change the implementation of the for loop? Or would that be our first task?
Sure, if you want to do that.
Or just do it offline. We can do it offline too. Focus on more interesting things.
Yeah, let's maybe do it offline, because I want to get to adding
yeah,
features.
Me too. Okay.
All right.
We're going to add more attributes to our currently small record. But we want to drive it by tests, I presume, is what you're going to say.
Yes, I think the last thing we did was we pretty much encapsulated all the setup so that in preparation for this step, right? That was the last thing we did. And so now if we look at basically where we actually instantiate this record in our tests, it's pretty much just in our factory.
Right.
And so now what we can do is and so this is interesting. It's like, what tests would we want to write that would push us to add these attributes? And so for that, we probably want to look at Song Searcher itself and see what, or sort of really probably the service layer, which is how we interact with our application. What do we want to do there? So maybe let's look at our song service tests for what are we doing in terms of adding stuff.
What is it?
Hey there, Tramp Stars. Nice to see you.
My brain just fell out. What was the? Oh yeah, Control F12. All that just to see the three names of.
Okay, yeah. I mean, there's only the three, and we want the added songs. So we're just basically there on line 41 on the top. We're just doing. So we're basically saying to the
factory.
So that one really it's 45 where we're actually adding the song.
Right.
And so I think if we wanted to drive this by test, and here's a case where like I don't have a strong feeling that we necessarily needed to drive it by test, because the other two pieces of data that we want to add to the song, the release title and the artist,
I think it's 3 actually,
was it 3?
and release type. Yeah.
Okay.
We talked about possibly
Right,
grouping those into another,
right.
but that's more of a when we really need it kind of thing.
Yeah. Um, and so really the question is probably more at it would, I think any test would be more about how do we want to view the thing on the UI. Because even right now, all we display are the titles when we do a search by theme.
Right.
So do we want to start there and say what do we want to see there? And so that would be at the level of our adapter, and so that would be our song themes controller test. And so here we don't even say much about what the contents of the results are.
Right.
We just say that we get some search results. And so we have to decide sort of where do we want to start with this. Where we may want to start is, again, since our sort of larger goal is to create a UI to add songs. Maybe we want to start there. That if we add a song with these pieces of information, then they're all saved, and that might be the best place to start then.
So you might start literally at the UI layer, not subcutaneously.
I think we can still do subcutaneous, but at some point we're going to want to implement that UI.
Yeah, no, it's for sure. And then it's, to me, it's, this one would be, well, both of these will need authentication. Right.
Well, yeah.
Well,
So when do we want to add that? Because like we had mentioned last time, it doesn't matter until we have persistence.
Right. And right now we're not persisting, but once we do.
Right.
Yeah.
Once we do, we'll need authentication. So I think that is pretty much dependent on persistence. Because if it's not persisted,
Who cares?
then who cares what somebody does?
Yeah. So those two are coupled. And for me, certainly adding songs via UI is, for me, this one's probably more useful, being able to bulk load a lot at once. But we do have to build the single song for, well, I could always bulk load one song, but for making it so other people can contribute. But that could be an interesting conversation all in itself, is should we build this, adding one song via UI versus doing a bulk load first? And that may be a can we kick down the road until we do the attributes.
Yeah, I mean that'll come up pretty quickly. I mean that'll probably be the next thing we think about, but we can certainly say for now, let's not worry about it. Although we are designing the use case for single entry, single song entry, because it's not, we're not handing it a file. We're handing it basically individual attributes.
Yeah.
So I think we need to actually decide that now. Do you want the first way for you to enter songs to be via a comma separated file, or is it through a UI?
Well, it's not entirely just what I want, is the way I'm thinking about it, is either way, until we do persistence, it doesn't matter so much, because we're just gonna, well, if it's adding by song via the UI without persistence, then I would maybe want to go to the bulk load because we have to keep reloading,
Hmm.
every time we restart the server or whatever. But adding a song via the UI feels a little bit simpler, though the bulk load is mostly just a loop through adding a song and then parsing from a file. So I don't
Well, I
have a
mean,
strong I don't have a strong opinion either. I'm just thinking out loud here.
I mean, I think either way, either like I think persistence is the next thing we want to do after we do something that we can enter songs from the UI. So the question
Yeah.
is which do you want to persist? Do you want to persist a single song at a time, or do you want to persist having done a bulk load of a CSV? Does that question make sense?
No, it makes sense. It's just, to me, it's very much a coin toss. Once we have persistence, though, I would definitely prefer the bulk load. So maybe bulk load is the way to go first.
All right, then that's
then
gonna shift things a bit, because then we need to figure out what is the format of the CSV.
if it's going to shift significantly, I'm okay with going with the UI. It's not. It really was a coin toss in my mind. Because if we're adding
right,
it
well, then
first
flip
as we develop it, then yeah.
Well, you're the customer, so you flip the coin. I'm not going to make the decision because I'm just a developer.
Yeah, let's go with bulk load.
All right.
Yeah. So what does that shift in your mind? Really nailing down.
So that means we need to figure out what is the flow of the UI, so we can figure out from an outside in perspective what are we actually providing to the application? What are we sending to the application? Hey, James, welcome.
That's interesting. Howdy.
Tukes, did we do performance improvements? No. I use out of the box IntelliJ. I don't work on projects large enough where I have to worry about performance. So we want to look at then is, are we providing a file that we're taking from your machine? Is that how it starts off?
Yeah, it would probably be like that. So we'd have to have like a file picker from the website. Unless you wanted to do a back end bulk load that doesn't have a UI, that's just, like a CLI kind of thing.
So you bring up a really interesting.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking out loud
question.
here.
So I'm working with someone who has what they're building has some very similar aspects to this, in that users don't really edit the data. They mostly are searching and viewing the information. Information is bulk loaded by the person who's running the service, and they're generally doing that in terms of loading the information in production, but that's not necessary. They could have something running on their machine, command line or otherwise, that still writes to the database in the cloud, because that's where the system is running. But the thing that's actually loading that data doesn't actually have to run as part of the application. So the advantage of that is there are a couple of advantages. One is that's the only way you bulk load data in, and so there's no worries about authentication and things like that. In fact, since you're not deploying that aspect, you don't have it's much easier to develop. The downside is that you are making the assumption that only you can do that, which means if you ever want to open it up to contributors, now you have to go and implement whatever, because you basically didn't implement the stuff in production. But those are, but depending on the kind of service, that might be totally fine.
I think eventually I would like to open it up for contributors to not just contribute one song at a time and tediously have to go through, but to be able to bulk load.
Right.
Either
So
way, we're going to have to do authentication if we go that route.
Right.
But
yeah.
if we could get farther along without authentication,
Yeah.
it may make that our lives a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think like we said, as soon as we have stored persistence in the database, we're going to have to do persistence.
Yeah.
So but the authentication stuff is not for basic authentication. It's not really that hard, in the sense of it's very well known. I know how to do it. So it's not something we have to research, and Spring Security at its very basic provides generally easy ways to do it, as long as we're delegating the authentication and authorization to somebody else. But getting back to the file upload, there are actually 1, 2, maybe 3 different ways to do this. One way is file picker, and we pick an Excel spreadsheet, and then we decode the Excel spreadsheet directly. The second way is still a file picker, but we say, no, it's only you're uploading a CSV, which means from Excel, you save it as or export it as a CSV. The third way is don't bother with file upload at all. Provide just a big text box where you copy and paste the CSV.
Right.
Now, it turns out when I was implementing Kid Money Manager, and the first thing I had to do was import the data from the spreadsheet, I chose that route because I'm like, I don't do this very often. And I don't have to do a file upload.
Right. Yeah, that's clever.
Which isn't hard, but it's like, basically I didn't need to provide such a beautiful way of importing files because I did it so rarely. In fact, I did it twice, and that was kind of it, because once I had the data loaded, I didn't need to load the data anymore. It was now loaded.
Right.
So
and I could see it getting more complicated at some point when it's opened up to other people than me, like, hey, it doesn't match the right format, or even like, here's what I'm about to import. Here's what I think it looks like.
Yeah.
Like sort of split it out into columns visually.
Yes.
And have it go, is that what you're thinking?
Right. And
before you say submit.
Right. And there's all sorts of, well, you called this column title, but internally we call it song titles. Which title did you mean? Did you mean song title or release title? And then basically matching up the columns, right? And as you're saying, like you could get pretty friendly and easy to use, but that's a lot of work that may or may not be worth it. But it's certainly, what is our minimal lovable app? And the easiest to get going is probably just pasting it into a
edit box,
a text area. Yeah.
Text area. Yeah.
Hey, Sweetie.
Hey, Sweetie.
You missed the part where we're talking about the indexing stuff, so you'll have to watch the replay. So it sounds like we probably want to go that way. So what we get from what we get from basically the post, right? Posting the form is a bunch of lines of text that are CSV. Does that sound right? And then in a very specific format, so we can be very much like, it must be this. This is what we expect. And we can always loosen that up later. But for now, since you're the only one uploading that or copying and pasting, you can do whatever's convenient for you.
Yeah, and it doesn't even need to have a header row that says, this is artist, this is song title.
Right.
We could just say it's this order, period.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So then maybe let's sketch out here what would that look like? What would the CSV look like? Especially in light of the fact that you can have one-to-many themes.
Right.
Hey, James. Yes, so the Blackjack Ensemble Blue is what we've been working on it as an ensemble for about 3 years. And it was the very, very core original code was not test-driven, although it did have tests as part of a course I teach on refactoring to testable code. But everything we do is always test-driven. That's a big topic. I'm going to hold off on that, and maybe we'll talk about that later. If not,
Yeah.
I'll make sure to talk about that on stream because I have opinions.
Opinions? No.
But it's not a short answer, and I don't want to sidetrack us too much.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah. So what do you envision the CSV looking like?
So looking at my spreadsheet, and I'll turn it into. I don't know why I'm leaving out a. It is a CSV. Release type's going to be an interesting one, and the themes plural. Yes. So then that's going to be interesting. Is in should this? Well, I don't know about should. I'm going to take away the word should. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. This could be done as I guess the way if you've ever exported Google's contacts, they do this.
Mm-hmm.
And as many as you got, it'll take it.
Right.
Or so this is the question that I'm starting to think about out loud is do we do it that way or have some way of subdividing themes? Yeah, I'm just going to pick this just for giggles. But something, I don't know, semicolon, things that aren't likely to be in an album title, or I mean in a theme. Comma is not likely either, but we'll just do semis for now. Or do we have a column with them all spooted together with some separator?
Well, since themes will never have commas in them, I assume.
I imagine.
Or will it?
Yeah. So right now they've all been one word.
Okay.
But
they might be
there
two
could
words.
Be. Yeah. This actually. Let me go take a look.
I mean, like you had New Year's.
Yeah, New Year's is 2 words, and that has it may or may not have a apostrophe.
Yeah, I'm not worried about apostrophes. I'm worried about commas.
Commas. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't think. Well, I don't have the ones. I only have the spreadsheet ones. Let me just look. Definitely hyphens. I think that's an interesting one. Let me go see if I have it easily reachable. Let me check this one spot here. This friend of mine gave me a bunch of her lists. Oh my God, in 1988, she gave me these lists. I'm looking for any. There was some that were like bordering on a sentence, not jumping out at me. Like all night, that's 2 words, but it's not really a sentence.
Yeah, so, so again, the only restriction I'm
Yeah,
thinking about is would you ever have a comma? And I can't think of a theme
I
that
can't think of
would
one.
involve a comma. And if it does, we could adjust at that point. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking that sort of the one of the better CSV formats is everything sort of in each column has double quotes around it. So each column, so you have double quote, the
Oh,
contents of the column, double quote, commas outside the quotes. And so that gets you all the benefits of you can put commas inside double quotes and it doesn't interfere with the parsing.
right.
Um, and you can then do things like for your themes, you could treat that as one column by putting double quotes around the entire set of themes. And it helps with having spaces and other characters that might be otherwise problematic.
Right. So you're thinking like this.
Right. Now, on the other hand, what I'd be optimizing for is what's the easiest thing for you to export from your existing spreadsheet and then adapt to whatever that is.
I frankly, it's very easy to take, and this one's Excel. It could be Google Sheets, of course. Um, for me, it's very easy to convert. Like right now, it's multi-column. So for me, right now, it's literally theme one, I think up to
Mhm,
5.
mhm.
But I can very easily, you know, have those
Yeah,
columns collapse down to one. So I don't think.
sure, and that's fine. I believe that computers should work for us and not the other way around.
Right, right, right.
We don't
Are you
we should not work for machines. Machines work for us.
true, true?
Um, so
I
even if
actually don't
yes,
like
it's
the fact
easy.
that it's a
It's
column.
I mean, even though it's easy, like yes, it's literally one formula in Excel that you just basically copy and paste. But that's work, and you got to check it, and or
I'm
maybe you
gonna,
don't
I'm
check it.
gonna, I'm gonna devil's advocate you a little bit. Not on the philosophy. The philosophy I totally agree with. Is I feel like I failed in that spreadsheet by starting out and having multiple columns. The
Hmm.
reason it's a fail is if I search for, let's just say, Halloween and um, werewolf.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, now I have to search multiple columns. I have to do a filter on multiple columns. It's a little bit trickier to use the spreadsheet, is what I'm trying to say, with that design, right?
Sure, but
But if that design got changed to being one column with all the themes comma separated, my life with the spreadsheet would be made easier.
sure. And if that was and if you're going to do that anyway, then I'd say yeah, okay, fine. Then we'll use that format because you're going to end up with that format anyway.
Yeah, I'm thinking
Um,
up out loud whether I want
yeah,
to switch
and
to that.
so I agree. Like, yes, you know, it makes the usability of the spreadsheet as it exists. If they're separate columns, it makes that worse. And putting it into a single column can make it better. Although this is where I'd be like writing a little function that would
Right.
do that work for me across multiple columns. But
Well, and I just realized the downside of combining those columns into one in the spreadsheet is that right now here let me just make it so that I can bring it over into view. So right now, hey, you be quiet. No, no, no. What are you doing? Hide. Go away, Dropbox. So here, the nice thing about each column is I can quickly look at what they all are.
mhm.
So now I'm kind of going back and forth like, well, maybe it is useful to have them. Like you said, you would probably write a macro
Yeah,
to deal with it.
if I were still using the spreadsheet,
Still
yeah,
using the spreadsheet, but the
yeah,
idea of this is to get rid of the spreadsheet.
yeah.
So where were you headed with your design thought? Was it besides just pulling it in as I've got it? Was there another angle on that you were
No,
thinking?
basically, like I want you know, and like Suiji says, I'm channeling my inner G-Paw, although I very much believe that before G-Paw has expressed it, is that there's far too many applications where you work for the application and the application doesn't work for you.
Right.
And I think that's just a very sad state of affairs. I think it's unfortunate that that we have to change the way we do things instead of the computers changing the way they do things. And I recognize the latter is more expensive, but like that was the vision of computers, is make our lives
Right.
easier, and all they do is
Yeah.
make our lives harder.
So given that, I'm thinking not changing the structure of the spreadsheet.
Okay.
Just having to decide here on the top. You got me cornered in the conference room. I've got to make a decision on the product owner.
That's right.
And
it's not an irreversible decision.
Exactly. That's kind of where I was going with it.
We just gotta choose direction because we're stopped on the side of the road.
Yep. So the current one is option D then, if I don't change the spreadsheet.
Right. Sweej asked if there's any significance to the order of themes, and my assumption is no.
No.
Yeah, that's what I think we figured that. Yep. I think the only difference in B and D is D follows the double quoting pattern that we want to use.
Right.
And so then there we go. Okay. So what we can do is we can start writing a test. So why don't we take a realistic example for the option that we chose.
Okay.
And we'll basically have that kick off our test.
Sounds good. Let me grab some. How about songs? I'm getting tired of Christmas, Halloween, and New Year's.
Holidays are over. Let's.
I got Angel.
Okay.
Angels. Oh, I don't have album titles to them. Oh, I do for. They're all comp ones though that have titles. Mm-hmm. Let me move up, find something else that has titles. There's a lot of ones with titles for songs related to fatherhood, or in this case, the subcategory of daddy. I'll just throw them a couple right here. This one's only got a single theme though.
That's fine. Got to start somewhere.
Yep.
And a single theme would be and a single theme would be the
simplest.
The one as opposed to the many example.
Yeah. And then this one would be empty because we're talking release title, release type, and then the theme would be daddy.
So Sweegie brings up a good point about, are we sure that if you exported that row, it would appear in that way? I'm like 99% sure.
Me too.
But perhaps we want to actually export. So basically copy that row into a new spreadsheet and then export it. And then make sure it looks exactly like that.
So well, export in Excel.
It's basically a save as.
Yeah, save as, because export generates a PDF.
Yeah.
Do they have an export? Actually, they do have some additional. Oh, interesting. So they have, you can either do save as, which is what I would do.
Yeah.
But I just learned something is that you can actually pick under export, change file type, and then CSV is there.
Yeah, though wouldn't that actually change your file to be that, and you no
Oh, because
longer
it
have the
says,
old one.
but it says it's under export though.
That's confusing for change file type then.
I'm assuming it means save as with new file type, but I'm not going to do that experiment on this one. I would do it on a raw, on a new
Well,
one.
you're going to create a new file anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm
Right?
just
Because
going
you
to do
just
it.
want to copy the one, the
Yep.
one.
The one.
And I know we said no header rows, but if your spreadsheet has header rows, then we should assume that that's what we're going to get. Again, we want to make this so you don't have to do any changes, right? Make this as simple for you, the user, as possible. So you have to do the least amount of work on your own.
So I've got 3 header rows just to make things more complicated.
Then whatever you've got, we should handle.
Okay. So in that case, let me.
I'm gonna I'm gonna advocate. I'm gonna advocate for the user.
There you go.
Even if you're not. Because I'm gonna say we want to make this as easy as possible for Mike Rizzi.
Here we go. Okay. And I have contributed, but we're just going to ignore. I have other columns, right? You got to remember this. I'm going to have to export and dump.
So that's great because, right, if we're saying right now we want to ignore those columns, then we actually need the headers to help us ignore those columns. Because again, I don't want you to have to go and create a new spreadsheet where you're manually removing columns just so you can export the thing, just so you can import it into song themes.
Got it. Okay, so that means I have to fix these columns titles, which I can do.
We will adapt to.
No, I understand, but a song title. So this one, artist/band. I mean, artist is fine.
We will internally store it as artist.
You're gonna browbeat me.
We will not force the user to have to go and change column names.
But we're not going to make it available.
I want to make Mike Rizzi's life easier. That's my goal.
But I feel what I'm trying to say is I haven't settled on these column names. So if I go and change them, which I'm likely to do, knowing me,
then the app will adapt.
Okay.
The computer will adapt to you and not the other way around. I mean, look, I'm being a bit facetious, like, and it's more for anyone who's watching than for you. Is I wish more developers thought in that way of I will adapt to whatever you give me, even if it's a little bit more work on my part, because I will then make my user's life easier. So if you want to do some work to sort of clean up the spreadsheet in order to import it, whatever you want, but I think it's important for folks who are watching, like, to think about how do I make this easier, and if it takes me like half an hour more, isn't that worth it? Given schedule pressure and things like that, I understand it's not always possible, but a little, developers having more empathy for users is always a good thing.
Toward that end.
Yes.
Where did this go? A second. I did the export. Oh, there it is.
Where'd it go?
Yeah, I want to take a look at it in. That's what it does. Interesting. So it doesn't. Yeah, I could drag it into. Why did that come up? Carbonite setup. Jesus. Just pull this in here. It's interesting to see what it does. Okay, so it looks at it as straight text. So it's interesting. It doesn't put quotes around column titles.
There is probably a setting that does that, or at least I would expect there to be a setting from my recollection. It's been a while since I've exported, but from my recollection, there is a way to do that.
So rather than, I actually would like to move forward with a simpler approach for now and still keep the customer in mind. Let's just do it with no headers for now. out of the gate, and just with a simple example, and build up to the header thing. Because I feel like it's a bit of a tangent, at least from my mind. Because I don't want to be trying to figure this out live, like how to get Excel to put out quotes and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Just, I don't want to spend everybody's time putzing with Excel and going, this needs, how do I get it to export such that it, the save as settings doesn't give me much. Pretty much just, there's probably options.
Yeah, I mean, and Suiji brings up a point that I was going to make, which is we don't necessarily have to process those header rows. We can just ignore them. We can just ignore the first, what was it, 2 lines, 3 lines?
3. Yeah, first 3.
So that's easy enough to do.
Okay.
But I'm also fine with saying, since you're copying and pasting it into the text box, that you could delete it yourself in order to simplify our work and simplify our tests a bit. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and I'm totally in agreement with the GPA approach you've got as well. And I think that should be the end game for sure. Like, we want to make it so that, we look at the headers, we can ignore columns we don't know what they are. So if somebody's submitting, so for example, I have a whole bunch of more columns than these. Where I've got, whether it's radio friendly, I've got a notes section, which we haven't talked about. I actually think we talked about a bunch of additional columns. We just are deciding to keep it simple at first.
All right.
Are we really at the hour already?
Yeah, we just about are at the hour. So why don't we take our break, and then we'll launch into our first test.
Cool.
All right.
5.
5-minute break. Yeah. All right, we're back.
Woohoo! So of course, that's the thing about breaks is while you're on break, you keep thinking.
Yes, which is why I love breaks.
Yeah, it's like they really are important. And I was realizing that if we're doing paste into a text box, that the whole header row thing is kind of a moot point.
Yeah, that's
But
what I was saying before. Is like if we're going to
yeah,
paste it, you could just delete the first 3 lines, and we
or
don't
not
worry
even
about that.
delete, just select all.
Or just select
Yeah,
what you want. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Same thing. Yeah.
So
Yep.
cool. Let's rock and roll then.
All right. So,
You got enough for an example here,
what's
right? Yeah, one, two,
yeah.
three,
So,
four, 5.
let's see. Um,
We were talking about going from controller down.
yeah. Except I noticed that you have basically an empty column for release type.
Yeah. Did you want an example that has something?
No, I actually think that's useful to know. Um, I actually realized that we probably want to just use the ones with the actual names of the columns rather than a real example. Because I don't. We could do that later, but I think actually it'll be easier for us from a test standpoint if we use something like what you have actually in row in option D. So yes, so where we're going to start the test is um, at the service layer, because that's the first place where we go from um, getting it from our controller as form submission. It'll be in some form object, and we'll basically have just one big blob of text. Uh, and what we want to do is, yeah, let's start a new test. So add songs, bulk add songs using using CSV format, something like that. Yep.
So we're gonna So we're gonna assume that the controller is just passing as a big blob of data, a big blob of text.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much, it's going to be right now. It's going to be easy because it's one line, but we'll have to handle multiple lines,
Right.
and we'll just assume it's one long string, and then we'll split it, parse it into multiple lines, and then we'll parse each line.
So we're gonna do this one first.
Yeah, I would
It's
say
kind of like
actually with only one theme, and then we'll expand it to have multiple themes.
yeah, good idea. Actually, we could just start by assigning that to a string, couldn't we?
Yeah, that's our
um,
string. Our you can say just row equals. So string row
oh,
equals. But you will need to actually escape that. So grab the whole thing.
ah,
No, yeah, that's not going to work because you've
whoa, what happened?
copy and paste problem.
Oh, I see. Yeah, do old school. Okay.
So cut that to the clipboard. Now put basically an empty string, and
And then paste it.
now paste it.
It'll put in the slash.
Yes,
Right.
because IntelliJ
The
is
escape
helpful.
is helpful and smart. Sweet.
Um, all right, so we now want to have a new. So what are we going to do? We're going to expect that when we add this song, it's basically saved in the repository. So let's let's create, I guess let's just create an empty repository.
It's a variation on this.
Yeah, I forget if we have one that basically doesn't take anything.
I can't remember either.
So
Well, I guess
control,
I'll just, yeah, it's complaining. What is the
yeah,
sequence for
control
showing the
space.
control space?
No, sorry, control space on the other one left. Yeah, because I want to see if it auto completes any other options. I guess not. We can go look at song repository itself because I don't remember what it has.
Takes a list. Well, that's the
Oh, interesting. So we
static.
don't. So we don't have one that basically starts out empty. How about we create
Oh,
another one? So let's do it the good old
TDD way.
well, refactoring way. So let's write what we want. So we can say new array list as the parameter to create. And then let's extract the right side of that whole statement. So from song repository dot create through the end. Yep. And let's extract that to a method. And we'll call it create empty.
Oh, there it is. Create empty.
Yep. And then we can move that create empty over to song repository. Yep.
I always get
the other F6.
The other F6, yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And that's it, right?
Yep,
Escalate.
that's it.
Yep. Turn it from private into public. Get rid of the attribute.
And just since we're not consistently using the annotations, you can drop the not null there on the bottom, line 21.
Oh, right. Somebody had asked about that in the last stream that we had.
Yeah, so it's I use it sometimes, like maybe in test code, because it gets generated. When you actually extract the method, you can tell IntelliJ don't bother with the annotations. At some point, I'm probably going to decide that I want to really start nailing down those annotations in preparation for some upcoming stuff and with nullability and things like that. But for us, we're not going to worry about that. All right, so we've got an empty repository. We've got our row. Let's go ahead and as part of our, so that's all the setup we need. We need the song service. So let's create that. That's the same as 43, yeah. And now we can call song service. What do we want to call this? Import, add, bulk add, CSV add CSV. I don't know.
I tend to like methods to start with a verb when possible. So add bulk then, or add bulk songs, or is that implicit because it's a song service?
I mean, we could just say add songs, and that happens to be
plural,
and it happens just to be text string. Although I feel like there's an implicit conversion happening, which is why I kind of like
CSV in there. Bulk.
Either CSV or import to get the idea that there is some transformation. So I'd say import songs.
Oh, I see. Do you think there's value in saying CSV, or is that a bit too detail-y? I guess if we had multiple ways of importing, we would then need to differentiate.
Yeah, at this point, I don't feel the need to narrow
clarify
it down.
Yeah, I'm with you. And then it takes a row, right? Or not a row, it takes a string.
It takes a string, yes.
Yeah. We'll change that name when we create the method.
Full Alpha asks, why not use some CSV reader? We probably will. We're not there yet.
Yeah. Create this in the service, right?
Yes.
Oops. I blew it. What do I want to call this? Not row.
This will be CSV,
Hungarian, eh?
and that might be it, or CSV, or songs, CSV songs, yeah.
So that's, we get the setup, we get the execute, so then the action, the assert would be, well, we're not returning anything, so.
Right, and that's why we're going to check the repository.
Right. So let's see, the simplest thing that would work is,
You got to query the song repository.
yeah.
And we basically expect it. So the minimalist's expectation, if we ask for all the songs, is that there's one.
Yeah, that it's, or even more minimal, is not empty. Or do you think there's one?
I think one is sufficiently splits the difference.
Like that?
Yep.
Cool. This is going to fail. Let me switch to, where is it? Shift F10. The other Alt Shift F10. There we go. Just IO free, I presume, at this point.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So Tramstars brings up an interesting point of where do we basically do the parsing of the CSV? Is that
Right.
application or is that adapter?
Adapter.
Well,
yeah, interesting.
I
wasn't saying the answer was adapter.
Yeah.
I was saying in unison the same thing you were saying.
Yeah, and so one could argue both ways. One could say converting external presentation, external representation into domain objects. One could say that that's the job of the adapter. On the other hand, it requires coordination with the domain anyway. So even if we had, for example, we get an email address, where does that, it would still require some kind of factory or some kind of, or the object or the domain object itself to be given a string and you get an email object. The other thing that that I think about is would we want to do this work with a different adapter?
Right.
So if I wanted to,
keep going.
if we wanted to have a CLI, I'd probably want to do the same thing, and I might point it at a file, and it would read the file and then call this method.
Yeah. So the adapter would just do the reading the file and then calling the domain.
Well, the application.
The application. Yeah.
So this is an area that I wouldn't necessarily like if somebody suggested, no, let's put it in the adapter, uh, I wouldn't actually have a problem with that.
Because we could push it into the application when the second use case arises where now we need to support a CLI, for example.
Yeah, and this is where for me it does get a little bit fuzzy, is even if we're importing CSV, we've got a REST API that supports that, and we've got our UI, and we've got a CLI, and maybe even stuff comes in from something else. Does that mean it belongs in the application? Not necessarily. It could just be that there's a shared parsing library that's used by all adapters. Um, for me, because this method doesn't mention IO, and it is very close, it is basically parsing information. I these days I kind of say, let's put it in the application and see how that feels. Whether it belongs in song servers or some factory method to do the parsing is again, it's sort of fuzzy. So see, Trampstore says, my opinion, CSV is the same as API, terminal, anything external. If you change domain, you also change external stuff. I mean, that's true in general, right? Even if, if we change what gets passed in through anything, if we say, hey, we're now adding more attributes to song, well, we do have to basically do changes up and down the set of layers. And so this is kind of my feelings. Like, this seems like a good place to put it. Maybe it's wrong. We'll find out later. But again, because there's no IO here, it would be easy to move around. And I think it's sort of tempting to try and figure out what's the perfect place for it. I know I get caught up in that, but I think because it's going to be easy to move around, I'm not going to worry too much about it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Hey, this noob. Do I have a preference on template engines? When it comes to Java applications with Spring Boot, Timeleaf, I think, is the only choice. I know there are other ones. JSP, for sure not. There are other ones, but one of the things I like about Timeleaf is you're basically creating HTML files, so I can preview them in a browser. There are some other template engines that are more also up to date that don't do that. And I personally think that being able to preview and design your HTML pages without having to run it through the server to see what it looks like is a very important attribute. And yep, today's perfect might be the wrong place tomorrow. When we have more information, we can always move it around.
Yep.
So did we run our test? We may have done it and I've totally forgotten. So
we did a while ago and it failed, but that's because it was returning.
Let's run it again.
Sure.
If you forget, you can always run it again.
Because it's fast and cheap.
Because it's fast.
Okay. Let me bring the test in view.
Yeah. I use this shortcut key all the time, and I'm often perhaps surprised isn't the wrong word, but I'm like, this is such a handy shortcut. It's one I really can't live without. So Control Shift Enter, or on Mac, it's Command Shift Enter, is basically complete everything. So it generally does a good job. It doesn't always do it perfectly, especially as when you're inside of a multi-level parenthesis expression. But basically, no matter where your cursor is, it will jump to the end of the line, close the parenthesis if that helps, and put a semicolon at the end. And so it's really, really handy. See? Okay, so what's the quickest way for us to make this pass?
Or we just add a song hard-coded to the repository.
So now, do we feel like we need to do that, or can we take a bigger step?
Meaning, well, we could add,
Or
yeah, you have something in mind, so.
no, I don't. But
Oh, you don't?
I was so. Finish your thought.
Oh, no, I was thinking out loud, and so that's why I was pausing, because I wasn't coming up with another approach. I mean, the song right now is a title and a theme. Where were we? We went here. Song service. Where are you? There you are. So I was thinking add song and just make the title just, I don't know, the whole string coming in from CSV, which is not so helpful, but it would get us to pass. Is that as helpful a step as hard coding a song? I'm not sure. That's why I'm thinking out loud.
Yeah. So Sweegie brings up sort of what I was thinking of
Oh, change the assertion.
is if we do want to take a bigger step, we would have to create a more precise assertion. So we would want to say something like, we expect that the song that's in the song repository matches our string. And so I kind of feel like we could do just add a new song and just maybe leave all the attributes empty or something like that. But let's take a bigger step,
Sounds
because
good.
I think we're going to need to drop down a level
Pretty
uh,
quickly. That's true.
pretty much right away, because we're going to have to, and there are sort of two directions that we're going to have to go, which is um, the CSV parsing and the adding of additional attributes. So let's change our assertion to be more precise.
And what did you have in mind?
Well, I think we can do it
Still
contains
all songs?
exactly. Yeah, it's still all songs,
Okay.
and that contains exactly.
Ah,
And I think you can figure out what we want to assert.
and you're saying, well, I want to make sure.
We probably want to use the song factory, by the way.
Oh, right. So were you saying just take the entire row and put that in
No,
the title?
here we want to actually match song title and theme one.
Oh, okay.
Right. So we're making this a much Sweegie is bigger, which has a nice aspect to it. I tend to call this a more precise, but it is a deeper assertion.
Is that what you mean?
Yep.
Okay.
Right, because that's what we'd expect, right? Given that row of CSV, given that we're only pulling out right now two of those pieces,
Attributes. Right.
this is what we would expect.
And even that's not going to work because we're not parsing.
Yeah, clearly that's not going to work, because it's going to say there's nothing in the song repository. Yep.
So now we have a different.
So now what we can do is we can sketch, well, if we had a magic method that, given that string, would give us a song, what would it look like? Right, and then what would it return?
You getting that wrong?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, song singular. Something like that.
Yep. And so what we're doing here is we're trying to figure out, okay, what is this next level of object gonna look like? What is the basically what is the best API for us to use here?
Right.
And now this will guide our next set of tests against whatever this CSV song parser is going to be.
I'm sorry. I was thinking about something else. What were you saying?
So now we have an idea of what our API for our CSV song parser. So we can comment this out, disable our test, and drop down a level to start testing against a new class, which would be our CSV song parser.
And would that be? Oh, I see. Yep. Gotcha. Okay. So you're saying disable this test,
Right.
and then we're going to create a new class CSV parser, and then went from there, build the test, have it auto create the test.
Yep.
Okay. So that'd be in the domain or application. I think we starting an application, right?
Yeah, I think it's an application. I could be convinced either way, but because it's more of a interacting with the outside world aspect, I'm going to say it goes in application.
So you said CSV parser. That's the name you
CSV
gave it.
song parser.
And then from here, build a test.
Right.
Nope.
Nope.
No.
Control. What is it? Control Shift T.
Oh.
Yep. Control Shift T.
Oh, interesting. I think I've done that one.
Yep.
And it will automatically, does it know to put it, because it's a
Yeah.
test,
So if you go this way, it knows what to do, as opposed to
right,
creating a class from the test where you always have to force it to go into the
to go back. Yeah.
source directory, the main directory. And let's put the test at the top.
Yeah. Thanks.
So I talked about this on my stream the other day. There's no need to drag the editor tab to that tiny little space on top. What you can do is when you drag it, note the background changes. So drag it to the bottom, but don't let go. Keep going. Keep going. So note that the editor window is a much bigger target for your mouse, and therefore it's easier to drag to. Note that the entire pane is marked in blue, which means it won't further split the pane. If you move up just a tad, note that it now indicates if you drop it, we're going to split this pane into two.
Got it.
So when you drag it to the top, it's much easier to drag it to above the splitter. So drag it above the splitter. Keep going up. There you go. Now it's going to split. You don't want that. So keep dragging up. Now stop. Right. So it's a much bigger target than trying to hit the tab bar.
Got it.
So if you're not using like the tab shifter plugin for the keystroke, when you're dragging stuff around, I always recommend it's much easier to hit a bigger target. In UX, we call this Fitts law. It's easier to hit a bigger target than a smaller target.
What was it called? Tab shifter plugin?
Yeah. So the problem with tab shifter plugin is if you don't code much, you have now an additional 3 or 4 keystrokes to remember. So I'm I'm giving you basically a way that you don't have to hit a small target. You can hit a
Right.
big
Yeah.
target.
And that was cool.
And it's funny. It's one of those things that once you see it, it's clear what IntelliJ is trying to tell you. But unless you look for it, you won't notice you may not even notice that it's changing the background to blue.
Right.
And if you drag it more to the right, you can split it that way.
That way. See, I still did it the old school way.
Yep.
Habits take time.
All right. So let's now that we know what our API is going to be, let's go and write a test. And we're basically, because we're dropping a level, we're still going to be able to grab basically this test, but we're going to be eliminating a bunch of the intermediaries.
Right.
So we're pretty much going to grab the row and the assertion, and a lot of the in-between stuff is going to disappear. But you can copy the whole thing and then we can just delete.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah.
But you want it inside a test.
Nope.
Alt insert. Yep.
Whoop.
JUnit5, that's fine.
What do we want to call this one?
Let's call it pants. Let's paste it, and then we'll go back and figure out what we're saying here. So basically, we can delete everything that involves other classes.
We don't need any of this.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a second.
Yeah, we don't need that.
Don't need that.
Instead of that, we're going to say, well, what was that sketch that we had from our service class? So it was in the implementation. We said just magic method, so we'll have to come up with, but we now know what it looks like.
Yeah,
it's something that takes a string, and it'll be so we're going to call this method on our CSV parser, CSV song parser.
Static or instantiated?
So that's a really good question. It would be very tempting to say, just parse this for me and give me stuff and create a static method. In general, that becomes hard to sort of pass around as a dependency that you want to give, right? So ultimately, you might want to provide some kind of strategy pattern where it's like, hey, use this parser, this parser, and so this will be basically an instance method.
Which
is row.
We don't need import.
Yeah, that line you can delete because we're not talking to song service anymore.
Right.
And that we're going to want to assign like you had in the sketch.
Yeah. Goodbye sketch. Whoa, yeah. Really?
And now
doesn't know what a list is?
No, it did it.
There you go.
Took a second. And now we want to assert against that list. The assertion turns out to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
But you don't need the all songs because it is literally just songs.
Oh, it is. Yeah. Probably time to name this before we go and create it.
I think we can name it now. Yes. So I have a name in mind. I'm curious if you have one.
I probably would have done something. I mean, my initial reaction is
that's what I was thinking.
Just that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Works for me.
I was like, well, it's called a parser, the class. So it's like, but
yeah.
Okay.
So it turns out we might end up with some more specifically named methods, but at this level, that's totally a fine name. So I think yeah, let's go ahead and create it, and then we can I think finally name our test.
Okay.
Make sure you finish. You're in the middle of the
you're right. Yeah.
creation, so finish that on the bottom. Yep.
Those are all legit, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Wanted to get you to the null part. So, all right. So what are we doing here?
You know what I would do? I would go look at the other tests we pulled from and then just modify the name. But
yeah, let's go look at that. What did that say?
Bulk add songs using CSV. So this will be parse songs in CSV format, something like that.
Yeah. So I'd probably say song since there's only one. I might say from as opposed to in.
Yeah, I didn't like in. I thought I was pausing.
Yeah.
I was like, what else? Good enough?
That's totally fine.
Okay, cool. Run it and fail.
So how's it going to fail?
Oh, good question. Let's see. The parser exists. The string exists. The parser is going to return null. Songs will be null. So the assert that will be fine. I guess the assert that will throw a null pointer exception when it tries to dereference it to look at.
So it turns out, since we're just handing it songs, the first thing that assert J generally does with assertion is check to see that the argument is not null. If it is null, it doesn't throw a null pointer exception. It basically fails and says, well, I was expecting this to not be null. So that's what it'll do.
What assert that will do.
Yeah. Yep.
Got it. Whereas if we were in the test here and we called, dot something.
Right. If we said like dot,
then we get a null center. Then we get a null pointer.
Right. Because in order to pass the parameter in, they would immediately throw a null pointer exception. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. Cool.
Yeah. So Suiji mentions you can, if you don't want to drag and drop, you can always right click and it'll bring down the menu where you could move to opposite group. I find that harder unless you've used that a lot and you know exactly where in the menu it is, because that's a pretty darn long menu. And you have to remember in some cases that it's split and move down or split and move right or move to opposite group. So that's one of those cases where I'm not sure the menu is any faster than dragging and dropping. All right, so let's make it fail for a better reason. Okay. Yeah, you can always do the action, just say op, op group and do it from there.
Oh, really? There's a bunch of ops?
Oppose. If you say oppo.
You still got to.
Yeah, then it's.
Why is open showing up?
I don't know. Because. Yeah, that's probably probably with some machine learning gone wrong.
Okay, let's
So let's make it fail for a different reason. So how about we just return an empty list? Yeah, you probably could just say mop and see what happens.
I could say what?
Mop. I wonder if mog would work better. But now we're really off track. Yeah, neither one of those help. Okay.
Yeah. Did you see the result?
Yeah. So now it fails for a good reason. So now let's. Yeah, Suiji Mog isn't any better actually. So I tried that. All right. So let's make this. Let's make this pass. So we could return a hard-coded value. I don't see much of a point in that. So let's let's actually try to parse it. So here's where we now can have a decision to make. Do we want to parse this ourselves, or do we want to use a library?
Well, the fact when I've started typing this, it's pretty clear there's some libraries here. Or maybe not. Oh, CSV escape. No, maybe not. I would certainly like to try a library.
So they're
hand rolling this.
I mean, I wonder, is there?
Didn't somebody say there was one?
Yeah. So there are a lot of choices. As you might expect, there's ones that have been around forever, like Apache Commons has a CSV parser. There are other ones that have different purposes. There are ones that are meant to be super fast. The one that, let me go back and find it. I'm not sure if Full Novel was referring to the OpenCSV library, but that's an option.
Is that a bit of overkill at this early stage, or is it so? And this is the trade-off, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if we weren't using the double quoted format, then I might just write it from scratch.
Right.
Because you could just do a string split on a comma, and you're done. But because we do want double quoted, which means we want to be careful about embedded commas, it's not so simple. So way back when I wrote my parser for Kid Money Manager, I didn't use a CSV library. I basically leveraged Guava has a splitter class, and so I had it split across commas, which worked fine for me because I wasn't worried about embedded commas. But we are, or at least should be, and I don't want to write a CSV parser from scratch.
Yeah, me neither.
So
without doing a ton of research, is the one we could just grab for now and then.
Yes. So there is a couple of choices. And I think the OpenCSV one is fine. So let me get you the CSV reader. Go on.
Is it this one?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, it's funny. It's still on
SourceForge.
They're still on SourceForge. Good on them.
Last published in November, so it's not like it's a one that's sitting around.
Yes, yeah. So for something like, I mean, it's funny. It's like for something like CSV, recency is probably not something I'd be terribly concerned about. Like if it was in the past 3 years, that would probably be fine. Even if it was a little more, 3 or 4 years, it would be fine because it's not like that stuff changes. For other kinds of libraries, you want to be careful, especially if there's anything that could ever be have a CVE for security stuff. But for this, I'd be fine with that. So let's go look at the even quicker start up there under developer documentation. So there's quick start, but then there's even a quicker start. That's probably kind of what that might be too quick because we don't want it to read it directly from a file. So what we want is sorry, just dragging some windows here. Can you zoom in the browser? It's a little small for me.
Oh, yes, of course. Forgot about that. Still reading a file. I mean,
yeah, we may have to look at the docs to see. So scroll up a bit. So reading, let's take a look at that. So we probably want the RFC 4180 parser because that's in general what we want from a well-formed CSV file. But we don't want it to read from a file.
right. Oh, but wait a second. That's just their example is using a file reader.
Right. I'm sure
So,
it can. I'm sure it has the ability to read from other things. We just need to figure out what that is.
right.
So the CSV reader. I mean, we could always. So let's look at the. Let's look at the reading into an array of strings there under reading. Oh, so that's where we were. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking of. Since all the methods seem to require a reader interface implementation, we could always pass that in. That will be just fine. Yeah, let's do that. So let's pull in this library.
Okay. What's the best way to do that?
The best way to do that is look to see if there's a Maven. Just search for artifact on the page. Yep, there we go. So grab that. And let's put that in our POM file.
That's weird. Let me double click again. There we go.
And let's, I generally put this kind of stuff below all the Spring stuff. Yeah, so we can put as, so I put it above the ones that are marked test scope. So go up a few.
That would be right here.
That looks like a good place for it, yes. And Suiji mentions that 5.9 is apparently the latest, yeah. So what we want to do is change that. I hate documentation that doesn't keep that stuff up to date. It's not terribly hard and it makes for a terrible first experience.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hover over the orange? What is it complaining about? Is there a transitive dependency? Oh, because it's based on, yeah. And so this is always the problem with a library that is built on old stuff like Apache collections, is there's CVEs there, but I don't think we have to worry about that.
So do we ignore it or leave it so for a future video?
We can leave it.
Okay.
It's fine. All right. So let's go back to our parser. And we want
This
to do
one, right?
CSV.
Was it? Let's go back
What's
to
the
the document.
difference between the two? So
Where's my documentation? Second. You wanted to go to quick start, right?
oh, actually, you know what? The CSV parser is what we want, because that doesn't deal with reader at all. It actually deals with strings.
Oh,
Yes, and it does the hard part of seeing if you're inside of a double quote or not, which is really the key thing that we care about. And so now if we just call CSV parser dot parse line, and we give it our CSV songs, that will give us, unfortunately, that will give us a string array. But it is what it is. And these are basically the
based
columns.
on the columns.
Yeah.
What should we call it? Parse line or?
I might just say columns because that's what it is.
Yeah.
Hey there. What are we writing? We're working on an app where we can search for songs by themes that we're going to assign. All right. And now we do, tell me parse line is throwing an exception. Uh-oh. Why is it throwing an IO exception? It's not doing any IO.
Huh.
Why would it throw an exception?
Does that?
That's terrible.
Does this have documentation or no?
Well, I'm looking at the source code and I'm like, why is it? Well, that's terrible. That's terrible. That's very, I mean, one of the things is it at least tells me how old this library is if they think it's a good idea to throw an IO exception when you're not doing IO.
Do we surround it with try catch?
Yeah.
Ugly.
Yeah.
Whoops.
So surround with try catch. Oh yeah, Sweetie, I didn't update Nightbot. All right, so and what we want to do is we don't want to throw an exception for now. Let's just return an empty list. And so what we want to do is inside the try block, after we grab the columns, we can now go ahead and create a song from those columns. And so what is it? Columns 0 for our title.
No. 1.
Oh, you're right. 1.
Then
okay, we would have had a failing test if I got that wrong.
That's true.
And
I should have let it grow.
And whatever column the theme is in.
That would be 4, right?
0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that looks right. Yep.
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 And do we?
Well, song requires theme to be a list, so you need to do a list of.
Oh, right. I forget. Does .arg work at this? No,
Yeah, if you're at the end.
at the end. Yeah, I don't need to select it. I just do that and
Yep.
then list out.
Right.
Got it.
Yep. And then we can return well, we need to return a list of the songs.
You want to make a local variable with the list of songs?
No, we can just say return list of song.
Oh, yeah. And just pass that one in.
Yep.
So technically 21
Right. Now we don't
will
need
never
that
be
line.
reached.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the compiler just told me.
Exactly. Yep. All right, let's run it.
Okay. Prediction?
If we've interpreted the documentation correctly, this will work. That's a big if.
Fine. Is there more documentation than that one page?
Hey, that worked.
Cool.
Usually I would actually write some more exploratory tests, but since we're using just, I mean, this is where I struggle with libraries like this. It's like, should we just copy and paste that method into our code? Because that's the only thing we're using. So that's something that I might be considering later. Yeah, so Tramstar said something and then said no, it was completely wrong. Yeah, so this served two purposes of actually getting stuff implemented, but also like if we got it wrong, like if, for example, it was returning multiple lines and each entry in that array was actually a row, we would have found that out because our test was specific enough. So yeah, so it sort of served two purposes. It was precise enough that if we didn't interpret the documentation correctly, that it would have been obvious. So, let's commit.
So you were
we got some
saying,
code working.
yeah, we could do that. Wow, we changed a lot. Good enough?
I don't think we implemented it. I think we
True.
we can
Well,
now we can parse a single song from CSV. So where's the CSV data from? This is going to be something that is going to be basically uploaded by a user to bulk. The idea is instead of data entry of one by one, we wanted the ability to take data that we already have in a spreadsheet and bulk import it into the application. We probably will use text blocks for anything that's multi-line. In fact, we might even use text blocks for the single line to get away from the annoying escaping.
Right.
But that tends to add a new line, and so that's why it's a little bit harder to do with just one line. So we're at 3 o'clock our time. How are we feeling?
Feeling pretty good. I could probably do another half hour just looking at
Okay.
commitments I have for the rest of the day.
Okay.
Um,
Do you want to take a quick break or push on?
I think I can keep going.
All right.
Yeah. So there was that one. I'm gonna get rid of the palms. Where was it? Was it in the service? No. There was a one song one. Where was it? I thought I saw a single line. Oh, it's probably the color of this. No.
We're only calling it from within test. We had the sketch in our song
Oh,
service.
right. So it's just a sketch.
Yeah.
I get
So if
rid
you
of
go to song service, you'll see the.
There we go.
Yeah. So now we know what that looks like. So do we have enough implemented in our CVS song parser for us to be able to import songs based on the test that we wrote at that layer, at that level,
At the service level.
at the service level?
So let's look at
So,
the service tests. This is the disabled one.
right. So do we have enough implementation? I think we do. I think we can undisable it and then call the method we created. In fact, call the class that we created.
Well, you mean import songs will call the class we created.
Right. Basically, use the sketch we had, but now call it the thing that now exists.
Right. So that would be.
Yeah, exactly. So
What?
Suji says if we only ever need to bulk import one song, we're done.
Yeah, exactly.
Ship
Yeah.
it. You could just take the next line, uncomment it, and then use the method that's been magically implemented by us.
Yeah, good point.
Tab, not enter.
Right.
It took me a long time to get used to like which one is which. Tab will overwrite what you have. Enter will append what you have.
Yeah.
And then we could just
you got to put it in the repository, right?
Now we got to put it in the repository. Yeah.
So actually, we
could just call it add song.
Right, because we wanted to do both.
Yes.
Put in the searcher.
Right.
Oh, this is songs.
We could do songs.for each add song.
Are we implementing too much for?
I don't think so.
Okay, just checking. Why did it autocomplete like that? That was weird.
That's what I expected.
Is it?
Yeah. So now we you can do, if you start typing S and hit enter, and now do add song. And it'll probably suggest a way to convert that into a method handle. Yep. And that should do it.
Cool. So now we've So do you think this test will pass?
Yeah, I think it will.
What's your prediction? Yeah.
I think it'll pass.
I think the odds are pretty high.
Yep.
Sweet.
So let's delete that blank line on 37 and commit.
Is it now multi-song?
No, but now it's actually at the application layer.
Good enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's now implement the test where we can add bulk import multiple rows.
So this says add songs plural. We should probably fix this name to make it singular. Or do we expand this test?
Oh, I thought we did that.
So this would be
well, so actually I think
or do you want to go work down a layer?
I actually want us to use this opportunity to start changing to start adding the attributes for song. Because we're not fully using all the data we have there on the input row. Because we could go down multiple input, but that feels really straightforward. I could predict that that will just be straightforward.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
What's not straightforward is adding the attributes, and that's what we want to do anyway.
Right.
Is
That's
push in that direction.
yeah. Will
Um,
we redo this? We have a new test or use this one and force the failing to start?
I I think this is where uh, first of all we are only importing one song, so yeah, okay. This is where we change our assertion. Now we want all those
Ah,
attributes.
got it. Oh, I already got that one.
You already got that, yeah.
And do we want to, well, we know we want theme at the end.
Yeah, I'd probably just take that row. Uh, it might even be in your clipboard without the slashes.
Oh, right.
So
Actually, it would be in
Control Shift V.
Jira, right?
Oh yeah, you could just copy it from there. Yep. And then pretty much
Say
paste that into the song factory.
where is it? What song? What are you doing up there? Was it Song Factory a test class? No, it wasn't. Okay. You mean this Song Factory here? Got it.
Yeah, because then it'll force us to create a new song factory method.
Yep.
Yep.
Artist, song title, restart release type, theme one.
Yeah, and once we get to figure out how to add multiple themes, that will be sort of the next level.
Yeah. Makes sense. Still returns a song. Definitely a string for the artist.
I think all the names are great because the strings you pasted in were already good names for what we want to call these things.
Yeah. Now release type, eventually we might want to think about making that an enum, but for now, text.
Yeah.
And do we just force it?
So we could just return a song using the existing structure.
Meaning like this?
Yeah. But not artist, song title.
Right. At this point we call it song title. So now we've got a little bit of a two terms for the same thing from an ubiquitous. So here it's called title.
Right. That's because and when we incorporate release title, that's probably when we'll want to rename that record component.
Right.
And that theme one has to be a list of.
Right. So should I for now I'm thinking about changing this immediately to title. Here.
Is that what you want it to be in the future?
Well, we got title here for create song. I was going the parallelism.
Right, but which direction are we heading? Are we going backwards or forwards?
Yeah.
Because the way the order of the sort of the next steps I see is propagate song title to the song record,
Right.
and then propagate that to the other factory methods, and then we can start adding the other components.
Yeah. Oh, forgot to do my.
Now, funny enough, I think this will pass.
Were we even using this?
Well, we
Oh,
are.
we
We just
are.
created it.
Oh, right. Oh, but yeah, it'll pass because we're only checking two of the attributes.
Right. Well, we're only creating a song with two because the assertion is kind of misleading.
Right.
It looks like you're using all the things we're not. All right. So let's do that rename on the record component that you wanted.
Mm. Over here?
Yeah.
The other F6.
The other F6 is.
Okay.
There must be some history as to why Shift F6 is rename and F6 is move, because you do renames way more often than moves.
Right.
But oh well.
And rename and move to me aren't siblings.
Yeah. Yeah.
So oh well.
All right. Let's run all the tests just to be sure we haven't broken anything.
Okay.
Did you run the tests?
Yeah, I was 1 second. I was trying to find something. Alt Shift F10. If the cursor is in the right place. So you're saying run all tests instead of IO free.
I actually didn't, but actually I'm glad you did, because we haven't run those in a while.
Yeah. Well, we ran them when we started the stream.
So yeah, which is
nonsense.
over 2 hours ago. So that's a while.
So Alt Shift F10. Cool.
No, they definitely did renaming first, because I remember it used to be a plugin called Renamer. Before IntelliJ was a thing, it was a plugin. All right, so let's let's add our components. So let's go back to our song factory, and we can drive it from there. So what order do you want these in? Basically the order you have them?
Yeah, I don't see any reason not to, other than, yeah, I think it's important to have theme at the end.
Yep.
We might as well stick with this order.
All right, then let's do it.
So are you saying something like, as long as I had cap locks not on?
I think caps lock should never be the default. Yeah, artist, song title, release type.
Oh, did I override song title? I guess I did.
Yeah, you did.
Ah.
And you did it again.
So why? Oh, I need a space is what I needed. Now we're good.
All right.
Ish. New constructor or change the existing one? This could be
That's an
interesting.
excellent question.
It depends on how much, what did the change?
So the only place that we actually call new, because it's only going to change the constructor, right, I believe, is maybe one place in our production stuff, and literally this factory. Can you scroll up a bit? We have another static factory method there, right? Yeah, so let's translate 16 to be in terms of the one on 19. So basically delegate, instead of a new, let's delegate it.
Oh.
There's not going to be any, I don't think there's an automated refactoring for that.
Yeah, I was wondering if there was.
Well, we could by doing an extract. It's not worth it. So just say create song. No, just say create song.
Oh, right, because they're both in the same. So this would then be.
Oh, this one has the multiple things. I'm sorry. Then let's not do that now. So we'll deal with that later. So I think let's change the, let's do a commit.
Should we fix this name first? Theme 1. At this point, it's not a theme 1.
Well.
Oh, wait a second. It's a single.
It is a theme. It is the first of I'd leave it, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
We're
not compiling.
That's fine, but I want to do a commit before we do a refactor.
I see.
Because in case we have to back up, we don't want to have to try to undo it.
Yeah.
So this is I usually say something like a save point before risky refactor.
I like the alliteration of that. Risky refactor.
I'm not sure about Mike, but I'm pretty much a Java head.
Yeah.
Been doing Java for 27 years.
Wow. I was big on C++ for a couple decades, and then C#, and then started dabbling in Java, which you could probably tell that I'm not a Java head. But I think it's super cool, and I'm enjoying it.
All right, let's do that risky refactor.
So this is the part I wasn't sure what you mean by that. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking change the existing constructor.
Okay. So,
but you want to do it from the red.
no. That's what we want.
And that's what you want. Yes.
1, 2, 3. What is the difference between the first and the second? String, string.
Actually, that might not be the one we want. That's the one we want.
What's the difference?
The difference is the second one puts artist first. The first one puts the...
Right. So you need to navigate through it to see, like, the type is not sufficient, which is the whole problem with using types.
Yes.
Primitive obsession.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's make that wider. So got artist. Oh, it mucked up song title.
It mucked up song title. Interesting. Default value is song title.
Can you move the dialogue?
Editable, right?
Can you move the dialogue up, because I want to see what we're actually doing? So, yeah. So let's change that to song title. Then release title is fine. The second song title should be release type. Boy, I don't know why it did that.
It really managed that up.
And then we got themes. Yeah. Okay. So it was close but no cigar.
Yeah.
Or close but no guitar. Let's refactor.
Letting the rip. Okay.
I kind of think it's... I'm not sure. So let's continue, and this is why we did that checkpoint, because this is a bit of an odd change. So I expected callers to call the constructor to be now not compilable like 16. So that I expected. Let's go look at what it did to the song record. Artist, song title, release type. That looks fine.
Yeah.
And so is the only... I expect to be one other compiler error. So let's try to run the IO free tests. Mainly because I want it to compile. I always do run tests as a way to do compile.
Right.
So I expect at least a couple of compile errors. So yeah, so the one in Song Searcher, unsurprising. Okay.
All three are in Song Searcher.
Yeah.
Oh, they're on the same line.
Yeah, it's basically because there's 3 errors on that one line.
Right. So that's it.
We probably could have done this with the change signature, but let's just fix these by putting just empty quotes there.
Yeah.
Or you could put in sort of default artist, yeah, like that. So if you select the word and then type a double quote, it will automatically surround it with double quotes.
Nice.
Which is handy, although sometimes it's annoying. But in this case, it's handy. So Philanova asks how to fix primitive obsession in this case. I will say stay tuned.
Yeah. So let's see.
And
Now this one's interesting. Song with theme. Oh, what was this?
this was
Artist. Title.
basically, I think we might have even been calling this. Where are we calling this from? I think we're calling it from the startup.
So we added this prefix of song. It looks like we're never even checking this.
Oh, this is right. This was when we were first doing some tests, and so this was sort of a nullable kind of thing. So that was that. So this is basically for tests, right? Because that's the only place it's called is in that test, right?
Yes. Let me double check again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one test.
Yeah.
But it's weird to have it return this song with theme plus the
Right.
theme.
Right. And I wonder if maybe we'll want to move that into the either use the song factory or maybe move it to the song. But it's fine for now. Our main goal right now is get stuff to compile. So let's fix the other compile errors.
Same thing, right?
No, here I would put empty strings because otherwise we're in danger of matching what's in the tech, what's in the test. We'd probably end up fixing it, but it would be falsifying it.
You know what's interesting that's happening there is, did I do the paste? I did not. Oh, maybe I did. Wow, it's just automatic. So now we should. Oh no, there's still some compiling errors. Looks like we got more now.
Yeah, this is the problem with compiler errors. You compile, you fix them, and you can try and compile again, you find more.
Right, because it stopped.
Yeah. So what?
Oh.
So here, since these are used by tests where we don't care about those other things, let's just turn those into strings that just say irrelevant. Relevant artist, relevant song title, something like that.
This one's totally wrong.
So we do want the actual title that's passed in, though.
Oh, right. Now at this point, well, it's not the right time to refactor that name.
Oh, you could have just changed it, but now you can rename it.
Next error.
Yep.
So now here, this is the song searcher.
So this is basically just test data that gets put in when we start up the system. So here I think we can just do the same thing, surround it with double quotes. So for those of you in chat, I posted a link to my talk on primitive obsession and how you fix it. So it's a good video to watch. One of my favorite topics. But we'll be doing that in songs in the song themes app because certainly for some things we're going to want to have some behavior around them, and if nothing else, stop having string.
Yeah.
All right, does it compile yet?
Looks like it, but I haven't tried it. Let's find out. I'm not seeing blood in the gutter, as one of my colleagues used to say about compile errors. Now we broke the whole world.
Did we? We might have swapped some places in our song factory and put things in the wrong order.
That could
So
be.
let's go check. Let's find the one.
Back to the errors.
Let's track it from one of the tests.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what IntelliJ was warning us about. So on line 72 there, and again, this is the problem with untyped or string, basically untyped stuff. So let's fix that because it's actually testing the wrong thing.
So you're saying is that this should be song title.
Yeah.
And it converted it.
It had converted it because of the order of the parameters. So we probably took a step too big.
Got it.
We should have put the new stuff all the way at the end, get everything to work, and then put stuff in the right order.
Right. Why is this one not?
So we can probably just do a global search and replace for song : release type.
But why is this one failing? This one's.
Let's go to it. I'm sure it's the same reason.
I was like,
right? It's getting release type.
oh, this is a. But where is the : ? That's what I'm not seeing.
Our song searcher is wrong, right? Song titles by theme, we're not getting the titles, so let's fix that. Yeah.
Here.
That's why I want you to do a global,
yeah.
Global search and replace for that.
Which I forget the shortcut for that is.
It's under find, and then find in files, replace in files.
Control Shift F. Okay.
Control Shift R because we want to replace it.
Shift R.
So that should be song title. Yep.
Just let her rip.
Let's do it.
Be brave.
And let's run our tests, see which ones are still broken.
Not bad. Down to 2.
So this one I expected to fail because we're not.
Right.
We're not going to parse it, so that's fine. And the other one. And that one is basically dependent on. That one's dependent on the broken CSV parsing.
This one.
Yeah. So this is what I expected after all the fix ups. We are not parsing all the columns.
Right, because we just adding those columns.
Yeah.
So we're back to finally adding the feature that we're adding.
Right, and this is probably a good place to stop to leave us a breadcrumb for next time.
No, good point.
But we can commit, and certainly a good way towards getting all the attributes. The song now has all the attributes that we want, and we have to fix the parsing. Yep.
Cool.
All right.
Time flew by, 2.5 hours.
Yes. And it's interesting, like it took us a while to figure out like what do we want to do, what were the next steps, and so on, and that's a fact of life. Typing is not the bottleneck.
Yep, for sure. Did we get all the questions that came in?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, Sweegie mentions in addition to the double quote, there's other stuff that will sort of auto surround. To be quite honest, I've turned most of that off because it seemed to want to do that at the most inopportune times. So I end up turning that off, but it's there.
You know what it's called in the options menu?
It might be called auto surround or surround. And it's under smart keys on the left. Yeah. Yep.
I'm not going to undo it. I just was wondering
Yeah.
which one it was.
Yeah.
And also for anybody watching.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of things
Find
under here under the smart keys where it'll auto insert the pair, it'll auto insert a pair quote. It'll do a bunch of things for you. I've turned some of those off because I actually end up being smarter than IntelliJ. But they're good. They're usually doing the right thing. Yeah, and then there is a separate surround, a whole separate set of surround functionality that you can do.
That's up here, right? This.
Yeah, so it's surround with, which I guess is Control Alt T for you. So if we go into the code.
Hey.
And just click where you are and just say Control Alt T. And this is where you can surround it with the if else, try catch, stuff like that. And I have some custom ones that I've created as well that are, first when I'm constantly surrounding stuff with list of, you can do that with a custom surround with. Yeah.
Is that
it's a live template, yeah.
Live templates, yeah.
Yeah, so live templates, they're basically two kinds. There's I type AST and it expands like a macro kind of thing. And then there's other ones where it's takes whatever's selected as input into the live template. And so it's a separate kind of thing. So if you
Sorry, were you instructing me to do something? I was just browsing.
Yeah, so if you look at if you look at those templates, you'll see some of them that say surround with.
Right, like this one.
Yeah. And so what it does is it takes, if you look at the template, you can see the dollar selection dollar. And that's where it grabs from what's currently selected and then sticks it into the template.
That's cool. And then if you want to make your own,
you just add another
hit
template.
The plus sign here.
Yep.
Sweet.
Yep. All right. I think that's all.
It's good for me.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to be a little bit sparse next week.
Yeah.
Maybe one day, maybe not.
Yeah. So we'll play it by ear as always. If you want to know when I'm going to go live solo or we're going to pair with Mike or someone else, Discord is the best way to stay informed. So just go to ted.dev/Discord if you're not already on the Discord. If you are, make sure, and you want to know when I go live to stream, make sure you go into there's a special channel, and it is called Roles. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. As soon as I can get it in the right screen.
ROLES?
Yes. And let me do this. Okay. So if you're in this channel and you want to be notified when because I try not to ping everyone. So if I send a message to @everyone, it pings everybody. And I try not to do that. Sometimes I'll do it if I think it's important to the whole community. But I don't like to ping everyone when I'm going live. So if you want to be pinged when I go live, just click the little alert button under Coding Stream Alerts. If you want to know when I do other stuff, you can click on those, but pretty much the coding stream alert is what's going to happen more often than the other stuff. So once you're in the Discord, go to roles and then pick which one you want, and you'll be notified, assuming you have your notifications set up in the right way, which I will leave to your discretion to figure out that part. All right, and so as Mike said, the pairing will probably be a bit sparse, but I'll be doing some solo streams next week. And as always, join us on the Discord for also discussion about stuff. Other than that, I think that's it. All right, see you next time.
See you next time.